Yes, I'm on my phone. Hello, everyone. I've been trying to get on for quite a while today. Hello, Rusty. Thank you, Crowns. Good afternoon, everyone. Junebug, what is that? Is that so I'm live on my phone, but I'm reading the chat on my computer, so there's a little bit of a delay. I don't know what's going on with this stuff. Trying to get this right. All right. The Keystone XL, no, it wasn't just a shortcut. It would actually add a significant amount of capacity to the overall system. So it wasn't just a shortcut. You just watched my video on the SPR. Well, I hope it was helpful. How do I feel about Vance and others saying they don't have to listen to the courts? Well, I mean, I obviously don't agree, so I mean, we'll just have to see what happens. Is landfill gas recovery prohibitively expensive? It's not, because the government gives you a shitload of money to do it. There's, yeah, it's actually quite lucrative. Yeah, so the government pays you uh, a premium. So, like, you sell your gas, and then the government sends you a check for an additional amount over what you sell it for. Yeah, it's thank you, Victor. That's okay, Jill. Jill's my mod. She's in the chat. My prediction on crude oil prices, I believe they'll stay relatively stable and stay within a, probably a $7 range of where they are now. Demand is weakening a little bit, softening in China. They've passed a lot of stimulus. But we've seen some capex reductions with U.S. producers, with big producers in the United States. So we'll probably see. I expect production in the United States to be flat. I don't expect it to grow much at all this year. It'll probably grow a little bit, but it won't be much. Everyone is expecting a little bit of a softer market. OPEC is not going to do anything according to OPEC. So I think it'll pretty much kind of stay like it has been for the last year. It's been one of the more stable markets here in the last 18 months or so. It's been pretty stable. So I'm a big fan of stability in prices. So what would I do with U.S. energy policy? Man, that's a loaded question. So the first thing I would do is, well, I don't know how much power I would have, but the first thing I would promote would be a trigger law to cap refined fuel exports if the price of gas in the United States hits a threshold that is above a certain level. And it would cap refined fuel exports for a period of time until those prices softened and fell back down and stayed down for a period of time. That's one thing I would do. Another thing I would do is require, so we require all kinds of stuff. We require, environmental impact studies and environmental phase 3 audits and we require a lot of stuff on the environmental side, which I don't have a problem with, but we don't require much of anything at all on the development side of the industry. So, if you want, I think if you want big subsidies to say, something that's currently largely subsidized to build it, then I think we need to see a study of how it's going to impact, if it's going to be sufficient to provide the local communities what they need as far as energy going forward, because we're not doing that. If someone wants to build a wind farm or a solar farm or a nuclear plant or anything, they get heavily subsidized, but there's no community planning or regional planning involved in that. They just stand it up and they get their money. So I would have us a little more involved in that, in a permitting process. Which another thing I would do is promote a very diverse energy portfolio and not show favoritism to, you know, certain types of energy. We need energy no matter where it comes from. And I wouldn't be, you know, um, favoring any kind of energy over another, because what you're doing when you favor certain types of energy over others is you're favoring certain companies over others. At the end of the day, that's what you're doing. So um, I would definitely promote a very diverse energy portfolio moving forward. And it would be a nearly impossible task, but streamlining the process for getting high voltage transmission lines built, which is almost impossible in this country, that would be a huge thing too, because we can build, we can build everything we want. We can build all the renewable power or nuclear plants. We can do a ton of stuff. But without the transmission lines, which we're not building hardly any of, it's really a exercise in futility. So, and transmission lines are maybe the most difficult thing to get done in this country. Do I think Americans' expectations are unrealistic on the price of gas? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so gas, I mean, where I live, a gallon of gas is cheaper than this. A gallon of gas is cheaper than a 20-ounce bottle of Coke Zero. You know what I mean? Like, um, a gallon of highly combustible explosive fuel is cheaper than a Coke Zero, than a 20-ounce bottle of Coke Zero. So yeah, Americans are very unrealistic when it comes to gas prices, especially when gas prices are used to promote their politics. How many times will Trump go to OPEC before they increase production? Last time he did it for nearly 2 years, consistently for nearly 2 years. I don't know how many times, but it was about a 2-year deal. But I don't see him doing it. I don't see him doing it this time. I just don't. I don't think they trust him. And Russia plays a big part in OPEC and OPEC Plus now, so they have influence there, and I just don't see it happening. A lot of people forget all of the things that occurred the last time he was trying to get him to do it. So, he threatened him in front of the entire UN assembly. I don't know if people remember that, but he got on stage and threatened him in front of the entire UN assembly. That's a pretty big deal when you do that. And when he was doing that, gas was like $2.70 a gallon. Like, it wasn't expensive. So he's standing in front of the UN assembly. He's standing in front of a bunch of people that are, paying $7, $8 a gallon for gas, and he's throwing a bitch fit about Americans paying $2.70. And that was on a national average. That was on a national average. So what that means, if gas is 270 on a national average, just knock 50 cents off of it, or 40 cents or 50 cents off of it. And there's probably, you're going to find at least 20 states that are paying at least 40 cents cheaper than the national average. So there was a lot of people in the United States, paying 229 or 239 a gallon for gas. And he's standing in front of the UN doing that. So $146 people in here. Thanks everyone for coming in. Please like and share the live. I got a membership. I got my first membership earlier. Linda, thank you very much, Linda, for your membership earlier. Sean Garner, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. How would you have handled the negotiations with OPEC during COVID? I would have done basically a similar deal, but we would have reviewed production cuts every quarter instead of made it a 2-year deal. So we would have reviewed every quarter. That would give us a little more mobility to reset the market and everything. Stringing it out for 2 years was the whole terrible thing about that deal. And they probably likely would have never done it. OPEC would have never done it. What I wanted them to do, they the whole point of Russia and Saudi Arabia getting into the price war was to bring Donald Trump to the table so they could bend him over on the OPEC 2020 deal. That whole thing was a setup. Like he literally walked into a hornet's nest and they broke it off in his ass. So, but yeah, I would have done something similar, but go back and review every quarter, and probably into the second quarter, we would have already been making adjustments. And so doing it for 2 years was insane. Thank you so much for the super chat, Sean. I really appreciate that. I work in the Arkoma Basin. Hey, I've worked there. Been very slow for the last few years. When do you think natural gas will get above $4 and stay? That, like, you're right there. So $4 is kind of a heavy resistance point for natural gas right now. I think today it's probably $3.55, but we did see $4 last month. It depends on how much shut-in production operators bring on as gas prices rise. And one of the difficulties in recovering gas prices is the wells are so easy to shut in or intermittently produce that there's a lot of additional gas in capacity that's typically not reflected in the price. So when your inventory levels start dropping and that price starts rising, everyone gets real excited about gas prices, about natural gas prices, because it's feast or famine in the natural gas business. And everyone gets really excited, and then they get really disappointed because you see good prices for a couple of weeks and then they just start falling. And that's because there's so much spare capacity. There's millions of wells out here that make 50 MCF a day that are just shut in when prices are low. And every old ass gas well in the country gets opened up when prices start to rise. And we get influxes of supply add. We have an interest in a field in the Haynesville, and we have a joint operating agreement with Sabine, and they won't produce a lot of their wells unless gas is like $3. They just shut them in. They don't care. They just shut the damn things in, and that's a ton of gas in the Haynesville. Um, that either gets choked back, intermittently produced, or shut in when gas prices are low. So it's a slow crawl getting natural gas prices back. So when you talk about $4 and staying, at 4 or above, you're probably looking at another year at least. But I do think we'll hover where we are, between 350 and $4, maybe 330 and $4. I think we'll stay in a range that's much more comfortable for natural gas producers over the next good bit. We're at the beginning of a bullish run, so thank you for the question. Do I get hit on a lot? No, I don't. What's the point in renaming the Gulf of Mexico? It's just like, meat for its base. There's no point in it. It's just like something for people to rally around. There's nothing significant about, it's just it's like high school shit. Um, Come to the villages in Florida. I'm not coming to Florida, much less the villages. Yeah. I no, I'm not going to the STD capital of the United States. That's not a thing. I wouldn't even walk through that place. I might catch something. No, no, Nadia, I'm not. I'm not bringing a pineapple. I don't have a pineapple. I don't want a pineapple. I don't think they even have pineapples at my store. So, is the oil industry still the largest contributor for funding of renewable energy? I don't think they are. There was a time when they were. There was a time when I said they were because they said they were, and they made all these announcements of all this money they were going to invest. And then, 12, 18 months later, they're backing up and they're crawfishing. So, I don't know the answer to that for sure, but I don't think they are. As an industry, um, I think just the utility industry in itself, electricity providers, I think at this point, if we're being honest, the taxpayers are probably the largest investors of renewable energy in the United States. It's the taxpayers because what's happening is the utility companies are going to their state regulatory boards and getting approved for rate increases so they can charge their customers more so that they can pay for their renewable energy. And so taxpayers are paying for it there through their utility bills, and then in addition to that, they're paying the subsidies. So, if I had to bet, I would say the taxpayers of the United States are the largest investors in renewable energy. Well spacing in the Permian getting shorter and shorter. Do you believe that is causing depleted returns on the wells? I do, but why is the well spacing getting shorter and shorter? They're over drilling the Permian. They're over drilling the Permian, and what's kind of crazy about it is we understood the well spacing in the Permian probably 8 years ago, and we figured it out probably 7, 8 years ago. But apparently many of the operators didn't. So they're just trying to pack as many wells into a grid that they can. And that can be very destructive to your bottom line. Does America trade oil? Well, American companies trade oil. And then the United States of America buys and sells oil sometimes out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And, the United States of America buys an enormous amount of refined fuels for our military as well. So I wouldn't call them traders, though. I wouldn't call them traders. That's a bit of a stretch, but we are a net exporter of energy. Yes, we are. Do you know if Canada made a deal with Japan on oil? Okay. It wasn't, it's not the United States making deals with Japan, and it's not Canada making deals with Japan. Okay. It's companies that exist in certain countries. And companies in Canada absolutely have deals with Japan for LNG. 1,000%. Yes, they do. All these people are arguing every day over who got a deal with Japan. Was it the United States or was it Canada? It was neither one of them. It was the companies that exist that are trying to sell their product. And it has nothing to do with Justin Trudeau. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has to do with the companies that are selling the product. Period. Canada does not sell anything. Companies that exist in Canada sell things, just like the United States, right? But yes, Canadian LNG will be going to Japan. Absolutely. The new LNG export terminal in British Columbia. It will be going to Japan and South Korea and anybody else that wants it. So do you like Lego Star Wars? Yes, I do. I actually did a video about the penny earlier. I went down the penny rabbit hole today. Yeah, pennies more than pay for themselves through tax revenue they generate. So thoughts on lithium extraction of brine water? Lithium prices are down a lot, and that's hampering lithium extraction from brine water. Not sure they have a proven method to extract besides huge drying pits, and that also is very accurate. Yeah, and that was kind of an exciting development, knowing that we could get so much lithium out of just produced water from wells. That eliminates so much mining. You know what I mean? But then we overproduced lithium and crashed the market. And so I'm not super familiar with what the price of lithium has to be for that process to be profitable, because it's still in the very early stages of it. I know when lithium was over $50,000 a ton, it was easily profitable. You know, that's why they went and did it. It didn't take much math to know 50,000 bucks a ton. Yeah, we can make that happen. But with much lower prices, I don't know where those break evens are. So LNG Canada, hey, Mr. Smarty Pants. LNG Canada should start up later this year. That's what they're saying. Canada got rid of the penny and we don't miss it. Glad it's gone. Why are break-even costs for oil less for OPEC than for the United States? A couple of reasons. One, it's cheaper, much cheaper to drill those wells. A lot of the oil is a lot shallower. It's cheaper to drill. Most of those wells, they do hydraulically fracture wells over there, but a ton of them they don't have to. Also, the wells themselves produce so much more oil. Their decline rates are nowhere near ours. Our wells decline very quickly. The amount of oil they produce starts to fall off literally within weeks of, so you bring on a well at 2,000 barrels a day and 3 months later it's 1,000. You know what I mean? So the amount of oil it's producing is always declining. And the decline rate in the United States is significantly higher than it is in OPEC nations, right? So the two things that drive break-even costs are how much you spend and how much it produces. They spend less, they produce more. So on every side of the equation, that drives down their break-even price. And but there's another caveat to that. So, if you look at Saudi Arabia, people ask me, hey, I heard their break-even price was below $10. It is below $10, but they use the profits from their oil to help fund their society. So it's not enough just for them to break even or to profit a little bit. They need huge profits. They need huge profits to fund their society. They got a deal going on called Vision 2030 where they're trying to diversify their entire economy and they're using revenues from oil and gas to do that. That's why they're so staunchly set on a price floor of $70 for oil, because that's how much money they have to make. You have to keep in mind, decades ago when oil was $30 a barrel forever, those countries had a lot less expense within their society. They had a lot less people. So over the last 30 years, expansion, population growth, all the things that cost societies and countries more money has increased in Saudi Arabia. So the cost for them to do the things they want to do in their country to fund their society, they want oil at 70, regardless of where their quote unquote break even price is. Nickels, isn't it crazy what we learn? Like, who would have ever thought I would know how much it costs to make a penny or a nickel? Never something I had never. It's never been anything I had to think about. Now we're sitting here talking about it. How much it costs to make a penny? How much it costs to make a nickel? Like, I am Daniel from, where's that? Bourneville? I used to hear horror stories about fracking ruining people's well water. Were these stories true? There was, so I have no personal experience with damaging someone's well water. There was a lot of stories, and some of them were fake and propaganda, and I'm sure some of them were true. Um, and so if you're doing things the way you should be doing, if you're following the rules and regulations within your state of how to properly construct a well bore, there's no reason that fracking would hurt well water. But that doesn't mean that companies didn't make shortcuts and fuck up people's well water. I'm sure companies have done it. I'm sure they have. But a lot of that, a lot of what we saw in the documentary Gasland, a lot of that was fake. It just was. But that doesn't mean there aren't true stories of that happening, because there are true stories of that happening. So it's not very prevalent. I've been in this business for 33 years, and I have never seen a case of us messing up someone's well water. So, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I'm sure it happens. Wait till they learn it would cause prices to be rounded up if we get rid of the penny up to 4 cents more. Yeah, they're not going to round anything down. I can guarantee you that. That's not a thing. So. Thank you for joining us today, sister. Is this the cup? Is this the cup you need? We round up and down here in Canada with no pennies in circulation. Yeah, but Canadians aren't like Americans. Thank you very much, Jay Styles. Oh yeah, Nadia, maybe someone should do that. You won't miss the pennies. They are a pain for cash businesses. One of my businesses is a cash business, and I've never really thought about the pennies. Never been that much worried about it. Like, you know, I'm not for or against pennies. I don't give a shit either way. When I made my video about going down the penny rabbit hole, that was out of humor, because I did actually do that. I went down the penny rabbit hole, and yeah, I've got one of those. What do they call those water bottles from like a freaking a water dispenser thing? I've got one of those full of pennies. I don't know how much it weighs. Probably close to what you got. Yeah, Rusty makes a good point there. Any contamination you would see in uh, a water well, most likely, and by most likely, I mean 99.99999% of the time, would come from the drilling process, not the fracking process. Because they drill through the water table in an open hole that's not cased. So the water table is exposed to whatever fluids they have in the well at that point, which would be water based. But even then, it's pretty rare. I hear it costs 10 cents to go down a 1 cent rabbit hole. It probably does. It probably does. Are you concerned for public safety, water, land contamination if regulations are removed and the EPA is gutted? Um, so I would say, I have never worked for a company that just had no regard for the environment, the water, the land, and all that, regardless of whatever the regulations are. That doesn't mean that there won't be some company out there that wouldn't take advantage of it. So, would it be a broad based thing that would occur across the industry where companies just throw all of their policies out the window because of regulations? No. But um, my sense is the companies that don't really, and they're very few and far between, but the companies that don't care about that stuff, they're not going to let a little thing like regulation stop them in the first place. So I don't know that we would see, just a lot of bad stuff happening in the industry because regulations go away. There's still state regulatory agencies which have much more power and control over those incidents than the EPA. That's largely a state thing. Um, I've never had to deal with the EPA one time in my career. I've always dealt with whatever state agency was involved. So if you start to see something happening with state agencies, then that might be cause for a little concern. Man, Jill, are you busy or what? Donald was most upset with crab. I mean, oh yeah, carp. Okay. In EPA. How safe do I think our money is? I don't know. You might be asking the wrong person. I mean, how safe do you think it is? Because, well, I mean, I don't really think anyone's going to steal it, but that doesn't mean that systems that protect it can't be weakened through incompetence. You know what I mean? Um, that would be a larger concern for me than, everyone's talking about Elon's trying to steal our money. I don't. That's just stupid. I don't believe that. But there could be a weakening in sort of the things that do protect us, and that should be more concerning to people, I think. Crypto isn't safe. Read Roger Ver's The Hijacking of Bitcoin. Yeah, I don't know much about crypto. Um, I've bought and sold some a few times, but I don't really know anything about crypto. Like, I can't speak on it on any intelligent level. I'm worried about a terrorist attack on an LNG tanker. That would be significant. That would be significant. That would be a big boom, a very big boom. Stacy Baker, you were listening on the drive home and home now, liked and shared the video. Thank you so much for liking and sharing. Do you get a prize? What do you want? Um, I um, I don't think people realize how big of a boom it would be if an LNG tanker got hit with something. That'd be a big boom. An unbelievably big boom. So the volume in natural gas is roughly 600 times greater than the liquefied natural gas that takes up the space in an LNG tanker. So what that means is an LNG tanker has 600 times more gas in it than it looks like it does. Because when that natural gas is cooled, um, it reduces in size to the degree of 600. So that is that it is a massive amount of gas that would suddenly be heated quickly from a very cold state, and that would be really bad. Could see it from space. I would guess you could. I would guess you could see it from space. Yes. Do I think hydrogen combustion is dead? I don't think anything is dead as long as people are willing to spend money on it and people are still willing to invest in that. So, no, I don't think it's dead, but I think it's got a very, very long way to go, because it's not enough just to perfect it. Um, None of our infrastructure is built for hydrogen, like nothing in this country is built for hydrogen. And getting whatever product you're making to your customer is the most important thing, right? So it would take um, it's going to take a lot for hydrogen to be economically viable. Is LNG like gasoline in that it's the vapor that explodes? So, LNG is super cooled natural gas. So it all explodes, but as it's heating up, it's expanding by 600 times its density and weight. You understand what I'm saying? Like, so imagine you filled up a 5-gallon bucket with gasoline and you threw a match in it. And inserting that heat into that bucket turned it into 600 5-gallon buckets. That's what LNG would do if something happened. Does that make sense? And speaking of hydrogen, my little brother, he lived in California for a period of time, and he bought some hydrogen electric vehicle. I don't remember what it was. He lived in Los Angeles. There was only one place he could fill that car up, and that was at the dealership he bought it. And he goes to this dealership, and they told him, hey, if you buy one of these cars, we'll give you free hydrogen for life. Well, he thought that was just great until there was no other place to get hydrogen, and he couldn't go very far. I think his car would go maybe 180 miles or something like that was the range of his vehicle. So if he wanted to go anywhere that was very far away, he had to rent a car. He had to rent something because he couldn't get hydrogen anywhere. And that's in California, so. From LP gas training that I had when working service and delivery, we were shown where train cars were blown big distances away. Yeah, that would be noticeable. Yeah, and that's one of the things that one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of LNG being shipped by rail within the United States. I'm not a big fan of that because that's a freaking disaster waiting to happen. Even if you just had 5 or 6 rail cars of LNG on a track that derailed, like, that is a blast radius of miles. That is a blast radius of miles. Just the virtue of LNG changing from solid to gas instantly at room temperature would be huge. Yes, it would. Because when they heat that LNG back up, it's a very slow process under very controlled environments. Because when they are letting it warm back up, that's when it's the most volatile. That's when it's the most dangerous. It's actually the safest probably when it's completely cooled and in a static state. Whenever you start changing the properties of a gas like that, the part of that process where you're changing, any change is when it increases the volatility of it exponentially. So you either want it to be a gas or you want it to be a liquid, and it's most dangerous when it's in the change going one way or the other. So yes, 100%. Neighbor's gas meter was leaking. 3 days after it was fixed, another neighbor set off a Roman candle that shot directly toward it. I still have anxiety picturing what could have occurred. Well, if there's no oxygen present um, behind the leak or downstream of the leak, it wouldn't have done much. It would have been like a little, and that would have been it. It probably would have blew itself out instantly. So, are there any oil plays in the United States that could be scaled such that at current prices, the U.S. domestic production could be increased by 30, 40, or 50%? I don't believe so. I don't believe so at all, because our wells decline so fast. To increase production now by 50, by 30, even 30%, you're talking about an enormous amount of production add, because to get to 30%, you need to increase production by 50% just to achieve 30%. Does that make sense? Because everything else is declining while you're increasing your production. And an additional 50% to get to 30% from where we are now just seems like it seems like a very, very difficult thing to do. I don't see it happening, because it's not going to happen in the Permian. It's certainly not going to happen in the Permian. Have you seen the video of a guy that runs his EV on a gasoline fueled Honda generator? I have not seen that. Um, it seems like the battery would die faster than the generator could charge the battery over a period of time anyway. I'm sure it would slow it down, but no, that's interesting. I have to check that out. Endo exotic. Someone earlier asked me about how I can't remember what they were asking me now. My brain don't work anymore. It'll come to me in a minute. Yes. Well, is Canada on the continent of America? It's on the continent of North America. He was not running his car from the generator. He was jumping his battery in order to get it to a supercharger. Ah, okay. In the US, you guys use gas to your homes. What is that used for? It's used for everything that your LP gas is used for. It's used for stoves, it's used to heat, it's used for everything that LP gas would be used for. Is it possible to reduce gas prices by half without huge subsidies or major disruptions in the economy? No, for the United States to experience gas prices that would be half of what they are right now, it would require a total economic collapse. It would have to be worse than COVID. Even during COVID, gas prices weren't half of what they are now, not even close. So it would require a total economic collapse. It would require a total collapse of oil demand, not only in the United States, but globally, it would be, this would be a worldwide thing. It wouldn't be just a United States thing. And that's why it's so ridiculous, you know, when you cut prices in half from where they are now, and in several states, that would mean just the taxes would be 75% of the damn cost. Like, I mean, that's just, if our prices are ever half what they are now, we're in a bind. We're in a bind. I've always wondered how accurate the estimations of oil deposits underground are and how those estimations are made. And so those estimations are made so, you know, if let's say you have a new field that's just had a few, however many exploratory wells drilled in it, at that point, they make an estimation. So they look at the size of that field that they think it is through geologic mapping. They look at the production of the wells that exist. There's a ton of reservoir engineering in there. So they look at the depth of the source rock and how many plays or how stacked the rock is, because you might have some areas where it has 3 or 4 zones, potential producing zones, and you may have other areas like the Permian where there's significantly more hydrocarbon bearing zones just stacked on top of each other. And you do a lot of math. You do a lot of math because you have to figure out basically the total cubic feet of the hydrocarbon producing rock throughout an entire basin, and then you apply a number to that based on well production, and you say, okay, we think there's this much oil in this basin. As they drill more wells around that basin, they can then adjust that number. The best way to determine how much oil exists anywhere is by drilling and producing wells on it. That's the best way, because you get to a point where you can say, okay, this is the number of wells we can logically, reasonably drill in this basin, and this is the average production of each one of these wells. This is the average decline. And once you have all of that data, then you can start zeroing in on the estimated proven reserves in that basin. No reserve numbers are accurate. It's the best guess they can come up with, but the guess is not just a guess. Like, it involves a ton of work and a lot of very smart people involved in that work in order to come up with the number they come up with. None of them are accurate. If you look at reserves in any basin, they should be changing every single year. Every single year, those numbers should be changing as it's developed. So that's how they come up with that stuff. And there's another little piece that's involved in that I'll go ahead and add to this explanation, and that is when oil companies who own that land or own the leases to that land within a basin, when they are trying to determine estimated reserves, they initially want that number to be as high as it can possibly be, and they will find ways to pad that number. They want the numbers high in the beginning, and they want the numbers low at the end. They want them high at the beginning to drive investment dollars into the basin, right? They want those numbers high, and they want them decreasing every year because they get tax write-offs for depletion percentage and things like that. So you start off with a high value asset, and the more you can deteriorate the value of that asset over time, the more tax incentives you get. Does that make sense? So don't ever trust those numbers. It doesn't mean they're not close or, reasonably, but they don't. Take it with a grain of salt. I'll put it to you that way. If they do come out with really high numbers, there is a lot of oil there, but it's likely, a little exaggerated in the early stages of a basin and a little more accurate towards the end. Do I think Aubrey McClendon is still alive? Well, if he is, he's like Superman. Um, what's the furthest underground that oil has been charted to be underground? I'm honestly not sure. It's I know there is oil that is deeper than our capability to reach. I believe that, yeah. Most oil reserves are as yet undiscovered. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he hit a bridge pillar, and not only did he hit it, but he hit it really hard. Are the royalties based on those amounts? If you're talking about the amounts of reserves, not really. They're just a percentage, and anywhere from 15 to 25%. Somebody may have got stuck with 12.5%, but the most common royalty is probably 17.5%. If you're a little more savvy landowner, you probably squeezed 20% out of somebody. The higher the more potential for production, like if you're a landowner, the higher potential for big production wells. If you're a landowner, gives you leverage to get a higher royalty rate, because those higher royalty rates can be offset through production. If your acreage is just so, you're probably going to get a lower royalty rate, is what I'm saying. And if it's the best there is, you're going to get the best royalty rate. Does that make sense? If you're smart enough to get it. What's the current state of the oil and gas industry? Is it booming or in a decline? Seems like slowing down in Colorado. So it's very flat, and I predicted this a long time ago that it would be flat, and that's because we have a new administration coming in, promised to drill baby drill, and people know that, people in the business know that drill baby drill isn't a thing. The hands working out in the field may not know that, but the people that run shit, they know that. And so we're going through right now is there's a lot of uncertainty, mostly with private equity people that finance a lot of projects. They're kind of sitting on the sidelines right now and looking at their options. The industry is not just financed by the companies that exist in it. It's also financed by banks and private equity groups, hedge funds, people with a ton of money. And they saw and witnessed what Donald Trump did in his previous administration when he got OPEC to flood the market and crash the market just about a year removed from one of the biggest crash in history. They saw all that. They witnessed all that. And they heard his talk about drill baby drill and driving down prices. And driving down prices does not equate to more investment. That's not a thing. So people are kind of being more cautious now, because what if he does get OPEC to increase production? Or, they know he's going to try his hardest to do whatever he can. And they don't want to be putting their money into a softening market and into softening prices. They have no interest in that. They can put their money somewhere else. Is there really an abiotic oil debate happening in my chat? Did somebody see that video from that guy from the 70s sitting in that old chair with that bookcase behind him saying that all oil is renewable, Drill Baby Drill was actually John McCain's slogan in 2008. I thought it was your nickname in college. James says, no, there isn't. Okay, I want you to think about something not sure, because your name is fitting. You asked, deepest fossil versus deepest oil found. Now, I want you to think about this concept. Oil itself is a fossil. So when you say deepest fossil versus deepest oil, oil is a fossil. That's why they call it a fossil fuel. A fossil is any remains of a previous living thing, plant or animal. Oil is itself a fossil. So wherever the deepest point is we have found oil is the deepest point we have found fossils. Do you understand? Or do I need to get my 9-year-old in here to explain it to you? Yeah. And you know how we know it's a fossil? Because we have a thing called chemistry. We have this thing called chemistry. It's amazing. Yeah. That's exactly right, James. It's not dinosaurs. That was a marketing thing. That was a marketing thing. That's that is true. Oil was up again today. For all the people that are gonna say oil was down, oil was up again today. Hydrocarbon doesn't prove fossil. Organic compound does, and a hydrocarbon is an organic compound. Yeah. On this planet, a hydrocarbon is an organic compound. On this planet. If our oil was abiotic, our chemistry would tell us so. Yeah, it's not that complicated. I've never been to Neptune. I've never been to Neptune, and I have no knowledge of Neptune. The guy who called you out for saying the oil is not down just announced he lost his job due to Doge. Well, that could have been several people. Are you talking about Bob? I thought Bob was retired. Or are you talking about someone else? No, I have not been to Uranus. I've not been to Uranus. I have not been off of this planet. I have been on this planet my whole life. Well, if you're gonna make popcorn, you better do it quick because I'm not gonna be here much longer. Is weed legal in your state? Yes, it is. It is. Yep. Hello, Andy. What are my thoughts on smoking marijuana? It's a free world. Like, I mean, if you want to do it, do it. Like, I I don't really have any thoughts on it. I don't have any more thoughts on that than eating a hamburger. Like, it's just something people do. Has anyone ever physically threatened me? Yes. And when they did, I gave them my address and said, here's where I'm at. I never heard from them again. I don't know how to make a meme coin. I don't know how to do that. have any politicians reached out to you to be a consultant on policy? Not really. I mean, I talked to my state senator, or not my state senator, a senator in my state about uh, refined fuel exports once, but other than that, no. My question is, I just saw an ad advertising Canadian National Gas being sent to Europe and Asia to avoid us. I have not seen that. Um, when oil runs out, what will power the world? I don't know. And nobody does. Nobody does. We ain't got that far yet. Ever thought about making merch? I've thought about it, just never did it. So everything Trump is doing now, we won't see the repercussions for the next 3 or 4 years. Not necessarily. We're already seeing repercussions of things he's doing immediately. And some things take time, some things happen quickly. It just depends on the thing he's doing at the moment. So am I Scottish? No, I don't think so. Yeah, the Gulf of America is not a thing to avoid bans. There's no bans in place where we currently drill, and the area in the Gulf that was banned by Biden was also banned by Trump, and it's going to remain banned regardless of the name of the Gulf of America. Even if that acreage in the Gulf was banned that we want to drill in, changing the name of it wouldn't change the ban. That's not how that works. That's like the areas that were banned are specifically designated. It's not just Gulf of Mexico, you know. They're designated by block and by lines, and they're very specific. So no, Gulf of Mexico doesn't mean anything. It's just it's like another slogan. It's literally just another slogan. It doesn't change anything that happens in the Gulf of Mexico. It doesn't change anything. It does absolutely nothing. Yeah. Yeah, Luigi Mangione or whatever his name is, he just needs to change his name. Then they'll have to let him out. They'll have to let him out of jail. He can go do whatever he wants and change his name again. 86 seconds? What is 86 seconds? Canada is attempting to open both east and west coast ports for natural gas. Is it viable? It's viable. The issues are more politically driven than, you know, so yeah, it's perfectly viable. It's they got to get over the politics, right? So then all of the all of the constraints are political. You want to fight me? I don't know if you want to do that, brother. No, it's just there's some people that, you know, I'm an old school oil field guy, and I've had so many injuries in my life, different things I've done, that I'm literally at the point where I don't feel pain anymore. I don't feel any pain, and that's the person that doesn't feel pain is the last person you want to be fighting because you can't hurt them because they don't know they're hurt. So, but another 86 seconds for Rajat or Rajat. Come on, Jill. He wanted to fight me. Yeah, the guy that's probably spent the majority of his life holding a PlayStation controller wants to fight the guy that spent a majority of his life swinging a sledgehammer. That doesn't bode well for the guy holding the PlayStation controller. Not normally. Not that I think I'm tough. I'm just not worried about Rajat. He called me a narcissist. Well, that may be the one thing he got right. That may be the one thing he got right. uh, yeah, these aren't pills, my friend. They're not pills. Yeah, I have a feeling that 86 seconds is about to pop up on my screen again. I'm not arm wrestling anybody for my scout. Like, I'm not risking that. Like, I might have a cramp. Like, anything could happen, you know? I could, you might be stronger than me. No, I'm not doing that. That thing's paid for. Do you plan on doing any interviews or collaborative videos on any political YouTube channels? Yes, I do. There are some things in the works. Yeah, there are. No, Hawk hasn't had me on yet. We've talked about it. We just hadn't gotten around to doing it yet. Will you and Hawk and Falcon please have a fight? Why? Why would we fight? Why would I fight Hawk and Falcon? I will say this: I would win. I would win. I got to put that out there because I'm a narcissist. Man, you sold your Corvair and your Triumph. You know, I've sold every cool old car I ever owned, and when I got this one, I decided this is going to be the one I'm going to keep. Like, I'm not going to sell my Scout, and I have kept that promise. All right, it is 5:20. That means I have to run. I have somewhere I gotta be. So I really appreciate all of you coming into my live today. It took me about an hour to get it started. I was having technical difficulties with my computer and gave up and did the phone. But thanks everyone for coming in. It's a 72 Scout. But I gotta run. So yeah, it probably was a couple hours. But thanks everyone so much for your support and for coming in. I gotta take off. Thanks a lot.